Welcome back to East End Park, David. It's been a few years since you played here.
Too many. I think 98. I think I left. So in between times, I've had a family and raised a family. So it's always nice to come back. And I think today, being the Forfar game, it's an ex-club as well. Added into the mix as a couple of players, or a player on either side that I've been lucky enough to coach in my coaching career. So I'm looking forward to it.
Good. You were signed from Forfar.
That's right, yeah.
And it was Bert that signed you.
Bert was at St Johnstone when I first started. He was assistant to Alec Totten, and then when he got the job here, I was fortunate enough to get signed by him. I think on the back of a League Cup game here, or a Challenge Cup game, or whatever it was, we got beat 2-1. I think I scored that night out there, and I think the September they come in and signed us, and as I say, it was my hometown team. They say, it was a no-brainer to sign, wasn't it?
I was going to say, was that an ambition of yours? If the opportunity arose, would you have wanted to sign for your hometown?
I think ultimately you want to play at the highest level, and I had thought football had passed me by at this level because I'd been let go by Dunfermline, ironically enough, as a 16-year-old. But I was quite small, and I was quite happy playing in 18s and 21s, and not really thinking. I was thinking about working. I was working in the bank at the time. But then when I signed for St Johnstone, you start to reevaluate what your ambitions are. But ultimately I had to go back to part-time to take that step into first team football. But I had a successful spell at Forfar, and it's a club that I'll hold dearly as long as I draw breath, because they gave me my first real opportunity. And to come to Dunfermline, as I say, it probably never worked out how I would have envisaged it, but would I change it? No. I mean, I met some great people. It was my home team, and I was part of a very successful team. And as I say, maybe didn't play as much as I would have liked, but I was grateful of the games I did play.
Obviously, the season that you signed was the season that they actually won the championship. But it was maybe a season that was tinged with a lot of emotion as well.
Very. I mean, obviously, with what happened to Big Norrie, and I knew Norrie from being a Dunfermline boy, frequented these pubs often. Maybe, I think we would have won the league regardless, but it just gave us that extra incentive. Once, if you could say you initially got over it, I don't think anybody got over it for a very long time, the players, because he was so popular, not just in the town, but obviously with the guys that he played with. He was just Norrie. But it maybe helped refocus us, and it was for Norrie. As much as we wanted to do it for ourselves and for the fans, the club wouldn't probably be as successful hadn't it been for players like Norrie, who spent almost all of his career here, and probably not the best player in the world, but he was a leader, and he was somebody that looked after. I mean, I don't think he was the actual club captain when I signed, but he acted like the club captain, and apparently welcomed all the new players. But as I say, I had a personal experience with him in Winker from being a Dunfermline boy, and I think that gave us the added incentive, if you need an incentive to win a league, and it was a very, very good league that year, and to finish top of the pile was just, as I say, it was magnificent individually and collectively, but it was sort of the icing on the cake because of what had happened in the January that year.
What was it like to work under Bert and Dick?
Well, it wasn't boring, that's for sure. I mean, they're a great double act. We had a lot of big characters in that team, and I spent a good bit on the treatment table, unfortunately. But Dick was at his element in the days coaching, and he had a great rapport with the players, never a dull moment. And he could give a bit of stick, good banter, but he could also take it more so from the senior players. And although I was 25 at the time, I was still relatively new to full-time football, and it took me a while to find my way in the dressing room. But they were players' people, they're from the same background as what I am, working class. Bert, by all accounts, according to my dad, was a fantastic player at Dunfermline, still held in high regard with the older generation of Dunfermline fans. My dad watched them often enough, and Dick was just Dick, and he's got a fantastic record in management at whatever club he's been at. And the players I know from that team loved playing for them, you know. And even when you weren't part of the team or weren't starting, which is never easy as a player, you know, you've got to see the bigger picture, you know. And ultimately, the bigger picture was promotion to the Premier League, and they say it was a great time for myself personally. Although I would have loved to play a lot more, but as I say, would I have changed it? Not for a minute, no.
Was that, but then you didn't play a lot, was that, or as much as you would like, was that because of injury, or was it because of just not being first choice?
I think coming in September from part-time, I was always behind them in terms of fitness, and I pointed the finger at no one else than myself, you know. And looking back, I should have worked harder, but I think the difference between a part-time pre-season and a full-time pre-season can't be underplayed, but ultimately the responsibility lay with myself. And when I did play, it took me a while to readjust to the pace of the game. And ultimately, you're Andy Smith knocking in goals left and right and centre, and the style of play that we played maybe didn't suit me in the style of player that I was, but I would still say that I wouldn't blame Bert or Dick. At the end of the day, they've got to do what's best for the club, not the individual. And as I said, I'm no different to anybody else. When you're not playing, you feel aggrieved, peed off, for want of a better word. But as I say, I enjoyed the time I was here. I just wished that personally that I'd have played more, but that was down to myself, you know.
Because you got an injury in a game, didn't you? You got a knee injury.
Yeah, it was February. It was I think it was a League Cup game against St Mirren out there. Pretty innocuous. I thought it was a dead leg, but it finished me for the season, which is probably why we won the league. But ultimately, I never played again till the start or trained again till the start of pre-season, and that's disappointing. But it's part and parcel of sport. And as though disappointed personally, I still felt part of it. You know, we had a really close-knit bunch of guys and liking what had happened. But I think it was a close score anyway, even when Big Norrie was alive. And you were never felt to be left out. And the greatest thing, one of the best things about being at Dunfermline at the time, a lot of the players had young kids, and Bert and Dick went about setting up or arranging parties for the families. Dalgety Bay at the Sports Centre, soft play, Christmas parties, but also many a night at the Gladia with a sort of karaoke's with just the partners and wives and the players all went to help bond the team. And as I say, if you've got a strong team spirit, I think you'll see the benefits on the park, and I think we did, because when we needed to produce a result, we did, and that's testament to the players that were in that squad backed up with the management.
Did you get that feeling at any of the other clubs you went to then?
I've got to be honest,
I mean, I went to Livingston and then...
Livingston was different because we were a new club. There wasn't a lot of history there. But initially when I went there, it was all home-based players and players that maybe weren't getting a game at bigger clubs. And again, the success we had was great, but it was backed up with a lot of financial clout. Whereas when I was here at Dunfermline, the wages weren't great. No meaning in a bad way, but compared to nowadays, I'm talking 20 years ago. But I keep in touch with maybe 10 people from my playing days. A few from Dunfermline, a few from Livingston, even Forfar and Inverness. But it was a new club, so it didn't have the same traditions as a Dunfermline who have been here a lot longer. But ultimately, your aim is to be as successful as you can be, personally, but also collectively as a team. And I would like to think that at every club I've played at, there's been a good team spirit, because I've been fortunate to be part of league winning sides at every club that I've been at, which, as I say, wasn't just down to me, it was just down to the management assembling the right squad, but having the players that know how to win. So I would hate to say that it didn't have a team spirit, but I think the fact of what had happened to Big Norrie would galvanise any team, or if it happened to a player in that squad, someone, especially someone who was so important to the team and to the community. It was, as I say, that maybe the thing that's seen us over the line, because we all said that the big guy was looking after us, maybe when we scraped a result here or a result there, but ultimately it was the players in the park that won the league, for the club. But I think all successful teams must have a good team spirit.
Yeah, definitely. You were saying that you didn't play as much as you liked, or would have liked, but and obviously then you didn't score as many goals as you had done previously, especially with Forfar, because you scored a lot of goals with Forfar.
Yeah.
So is there any goal that stands out?
The one that does stand out, and because it was part of a fantastic team performance, was the one at Parkhead. And I felt I should have had a penalty that day. I think, I don't know if it was Jackie or Stuart that hit the bar or the post, meaning 2-1 flat of Celtic, because they got a very dubious penalty. And when you go in almost at half time and lose a goal, 1-0, it just changes the whole team talk. And I know that now as being a manager and a coach. So credit to Bert. I can't remember what we said that day, but we hadn't played badly, and very unfortunate. And to get the goal that we did, it was. I mean, I've always had a soft spot for Celtic, although Dunfermline's my local team, and to be able to score against them at Parkhead, because I scored against them at Perth when I played with St Johnstone, but it led to us turning that game on its head, and ultimately I think we probably finished in the top 6 that year, or the top half of the table. We had a really good season, and it's something that, especially when you score against the bigger clubs, and actually the team that they had that day compared to maybe nowadays, the standard was so much higher, and so to achieve a result against the Old Firm back in when I played took a lot more. But we also had fantastic players. I mean, you could run through that team, and I'm sure the team nowadays would be happy to take any of them in that team. But that goal certainly, and even the goal, although we scored a goal against Celtic again. I think it was a Scottish Cup midweek game on Sky. It was funny because my wife worked in the bank at the time, and she was in London on business, and she was watching it with her boss in a pub or a restaurant where they were having a bite to eat. It was a Tuesday or Wednesday night, and Frenchie crossed it in at the home end, and I flicked it in. So although we didn't win, it was still memorable. But the one at Parkhead, because it led to us winning, which is very rarely do in Glasgow.
Yeah. After you left Dunfermline, you obviously went to Livingston, and then you went to Inverness, and ended up at Gretna.
That's right, yeah.
And that was where you finished up, is that right?
Well, I finished up, I was ultimately went to administration, but a year and a half into Gretna, when we were in the second division, I was struck down with chronic fatigue. I just couldn't train, didn't know what it was. So I was out for about 11 months. In fact, it was 13 months. It was November, and I think I played the following January. But I knew my time was finished there as a player. By that time, they were in the Championship, or the old First Division, and I knew I was never going to get back in. So Alan Moore was the manager at Stirling Albion at the time with Mark McNally, and he came in and asked me to go on loan, and Robert Snodgrass was on loan there at the time from Livingston. So I was just happy to be playing again. And fortunately, we got up through the playoffs, we won that. And then the next year I had a short spell at Cowdenbeath on loan prior to Gretna going to administration, liquidation. And as I say, I knew my time was coming to. I was never going to be as fit or healthy as I was prior to that. But Gretna was, it was good, excuse me, and it was bad in that you could see the inevitable coming because of the way the club was run. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful of the people that ran the club, but subsequent clubs have tried to go the same way, and they've all ended up in the same position, sort of bankrupt. But it was an opportunity at a late stage in my career, and I have to be honest, to get a good wage. And I'm not going to be two-faced. When I left Livingston to go to Inverness, I took a huge pay cut to go and play with John Robertson, who had a great admiration for as a fellow player at Livingston, but also as a coach, and Donald Park, who was a fantastic coach as well. But it was vindicated by us winning the league, and as I say, I'm still thought of well in that league, in that team, as a number of players are, because it was I think the first time Inverness had managed to get into the top league. So I've certainly been well travelled, especially at the end of my career, but it's always been for a reason. Some have been for professional reasons, and as I say, I'm not going to lie, others have been for financial, and I'm not making any bones about that, because anybody that says they go to Gretna for anything else than that is maybe not being entirely truthful, but I enjoyed my time there, you know, and the guy that ran the club, Brooks, was very colourful, you know, and you couldn't sort of knock his passion for the area and for the club, but ultimately it was only heading in kind of one direction, unfortunately.
After you hung up your boots, did some coaching, is that right?
I did, yeah. I was invited to go as a coach to Tynecastle in the east of Scotland, which is sort of non-league level, and I was able to coach the senior team, but also a number of the youth teams, sort of technical director type role. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think because of the level I'd played at and the people I'd played under, the coaches, I've took on a lot of good ideas from them, and to be able to put them into use at a lower level, the players responded brilliantly to it, because it's a level of coaching that they hadn't had before. And when we were at Tynecastle, we managed to win the first division in the east of Scotland to get to the Premier. But again, like everything else, nothing lasts forever, and eventually I just thought it was time for a change or a break. I had a break first. And after that, I had about 6 months out, and I took the Preston Athletic job in the newly formed, Lowland League. And it gave me an insight into how to run a club, budgets, managing players, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But at that level, it's very difficult to cope with the mentality and the commitment to players, because it's for fun. You know, they're not playing for money, but it gives you a real good education in how to try and manage players. Thoroughly enjoyed it. We finished just mid-table in the first year there. The second year didn't go quite according to plan, and eventually it was a mutual sort of partner. The ways, still keep in touch with people there, and I thoroughly enjoyed the experience, you know, and just wished it could have been different. The highlight undoubtedly was the run in the Scottish Cup and going to Queen's Park and being 2 minutes from winning 2-1. You know, but that's football, you know, and if you don't keep the ball out, then you don't win games. But to see the penny pit at Preston Pans with over 1,000 people there for the replay, even against Queen's Park, with the greatest respect, was fantastic for a club of that level. And I remember when I was at Gretna, we drew them in the Scottish Cup previously, and we went up there and probably gave them a footballing lesson. But if you'd seen who played for us that day, there was no shame. And I remember that day because there was 600-700 people getting round the old barriers again, like the old days, and sort of like football was back in the day, before there was all these fancy stadiums. But ultimately I took a break again, and then I was roped into coaching a local boys club as a friend of my sister's asked me, because they've no coaches, and I'm still doing that now. I've been a year and a half, but I've just accepted a post at number 2 at Whitehall Welfare. Stephen Hislop, who I played with in Inverness, had asked me, he was going for the job, if he got it, would I help him? And he's a good friend of mine, and we've got a lot of time for him, so that'll be more for next year, because I want to finish the commitment I gave to the youth players, and really enjoyed the coaching. The coaching's different to the managing, you know, but it's I enjoy both, but coaching is something I really enjoy.
That's good. Is there, going back to what you said earlier, off camera, is there any ground that you particularly liked or disliked playing on?
I think anybody tells you that they don't like playing at the big grounds is they're playing their own game. You know, I mean, as much as they can be nerve-wracking, can overwhelming, it's still the only places to play. And I'll go back to my time here before the new stadium, and the game we were speaking about, the Scottish Cup game against Celtic, or the League Cup, we got beat. I mean, there's 14,000 there. The day that they beat Airdrie, although I wasn't playing, to win the league, how Mark Miller felt taking the penalty when we were kind of all nervous on the sidelines. But that's what this club has got the potential of. Livingston's a fantastic stadium. I had 4 or 5 great years there. I've got happy memories everywhere except Hampden, you know. Because even Queen's Park beat us when I was at Forfar, so more success there as a fan. But it's just great to play in full stadiums, which unfortunately you didn't see much of nowadays for a number of reasons. So I even enjoyed playing at Forfar. I mean, it was the first place that I really made a name for myself, and there was maybe at most 1,000 there, from 300-400 to 1,000. but they're the people that are kind of life and soul of football, you know, that pay their whatever it is to keep these clubs going. I mean, that's you miss that. That's you miss managing, coaching. Never the same. Playing is the best time of your life, and anybody that's played the game will tell you that. And if they don't, then that's the players that weren't very good. You know, make better coaches or managers. But I mean, we qualified for Europe at Livingston when we beat Hearts 3-2, and there was like the way in, there was like 1,500 Livingston fans. You know, and they would die for that nowadays. You know, to get that was in the good times. But I love playing at all the big stadiums. You know, and especially when you're away from home and you see a massive support, you can't underplay how much a boost that gives to the players when they come out, you know, when there is a big noise. But ultimately the players have a responsibility to give these fans something to follow or to cheer about, you know, and value for money, because it's not cheap to go and watch football, especially nowadays.
Yeah. So to finish, how do you look back on your time here at Dunfermline?
With fondness, you know, as I say, I wouldn't have changed it. Probably the only thing I would have changed is I would have worked harder, and but that's down to me. I was fortunate to be part of a group of players that won an incredibly competitive league against some terrific teams. In the face of adversity, losing your talisman in tragic circumstances, that's nothing to compare to what his family went through. But he was such a popular figure in the community, but with the players, and I don't think anybody would have any gripes about us winning the league on the back of that, you know. But we were the best team, and ultimately you've got to be the best team to win the league. I would, if I had the opportunity to sign for them again, I would, you know. As I say, I have no regrets in that. The only the regrets I have is personally, because looking back with hindsight, and we're all better with hindsight, could have did this better or that better. The manager and the coach will pick the team they see fit to win any game, and I know that as a coach and a manager. And players that are happy to be left out shouldn't be playing, you know, and I know that as well. But tremendous. I'm a Dunfermline boy, I'll always be Dunfermline boy. I've been in Edinburgh for 25 years or 20 odd years, but my family's over here, you know, and I always look forward to coming back to visit my dad, and even getting an invite to come here, which I'm looking forward to immensely. And myself and my friend that's over the game, we coach Sean at under-17s, we coach Mikey Dunlop, who will be playing for today, and we coach Kevin McHattie, who's at Kilmarnock. They were all part of the Dunfermline under-17 team, so it's nice to see these kids fulfilling the undoubted potential that we saw, you know, because it doesn't always work out that way, unfortunately, with the amount of distractions that they've got. But tremendous fondness in my 2.5 years here, because it is a big club.
Well, David, it's lovely to see you back here
Appreciate
again.
That.
And enjoy your day.
Thank you. Okay.